It's playoff talk with Mitch and Chrome. Let's roll.
What's up, my family? Listen, first time listener, or you've been here the whole damn time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, giddy up, let's go, no notes.
That's my baby. That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored! They did it!
Slap.
What the hell was that?
Oh, yeah!
What the f*** are you talking about?
What's up out there, A2D family, sports family? We're back for another edition here of Here's the Thing with Mitch Williams. Obviously, this man right here is the one and only Mitch Williams. How you doing today,
people.
Mitch?
I'm doing great, Chrome. How are you?
I'm doing great, brother. I'm Chrome. No Tom this week, taking care of some personal matters. He should be back next week. But in the meantime, you got us. We're previewing Phillies baseball, playoff baseball, Mitch, because the playoffs are finally here. Lots of little intricate things that happened this week. Matchups we didn't expect to happen. So we'll talk about that. We got a lot on the agenda. But first and foremost, show a little love to Royal Billiard Recreation. Check out Royal Billiards and Recreation. It's the coolest place for all of your game room and man cave needs. For the last 41 years, this family-owned business has been the premier game room store of the Delaware Valley, stocked with the very best in pool tables and accessories. Shuffleboards, cards, tables, dart supplies, bars, bar stools, all that kind of crazy stuff. Hey, by the way, they got hot tubs too. Pretty phenomenal. You can turn any ordinary room into an extraordinary experience. So make sure you check them out. They have a physical location if you can't go on the web at 515 Bethlehem Pike in Colmer, Pennsylvania. Or again, on the web, royalbilliard.com. So lots of cool stuff going on there. Great time. Playoff baseball. Get your man caves ready when you have your people over to watch these Phillies playoff baseball games, Mitch.
It's my favorite time of year. Fall, playoff baseball, football's here. It's the best time of year.
A lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, listen, Mitch, we got a lot to talk about. I mean, last week we were talking about the Cubs. And then all of a sudden the Cubs decided to fall out this week. There's a lot of different things that happened. So we're going to talk about it. We have a matchup that I don't think we feel so comfortable with, but let's discuss it. Our opening topic of conversation, guys, here, our first pitch, if you will, is the Phillies will defeat the Marlins in the NL wild card round. Agree, disagree? And Mitch, before we do it, let's just lay the table out here. The Philadelphia Phillies clearly have the Miami Marlins to play. All games, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, home games in Philadelphia, 8 p.m. start time. So just so the people out there can check their calendars off if they're working, make whatever accommodations they need to do. But getting into that question here, that topic, Mitch, do you feel like the Phillies are going to be the favorite here? Do you think they're going to come out on top?
Yes, I do. They should. There's no question about that. This lineup is deep. It's very deep, and they're all starting to hit. So I look at this series, and they just have to guard against the fact that they're playing the Marlins. They can't go in there and act like they can just throw their glove on the field and they win the series. They got to go in and beat this team. This team has absolutely nothing to lose. The Marlins weren't picked as a playoff team. They have nothing to lose. They're going to go in there and let it all hang out, and the Phillies better do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, totally agree. And the first game Tuesday night will be Wheeler versus Luzardo. Let me see if they have announced any pitchers for the following nights. It'll be Braxton Garrett versus Aaron Nolan, game 2. And game 3 looks like it's to be determined. So we know who's throwing 1 and 2.
You're not throwing the Cy Young Award winner?
According to what I'm seeing here. I mean, they may have had to throw him already just to get in.
That's true.
You know, I mean, they were on the cusp. So, this time last week, Mitch, we were talking, Arizona. We're talking the Phillies keeping number 1, but we knew they were pretty much at that point a lock with how well they were playing, and teams were falling off. They made up ground the week before, or gained ground, I should say, to get closer to clinching that 1 spot. And clearly this week, Chicago totally fell off because we were talking about playing Arizona
Yep.
And then the Cubs obviously being out there, and the Cubs just totally fell off this week. Miami played well, snuck in, got that last wild, or that actually not just the last wild. They jumped Arizona, who also struggled and scuffled through this last week. I think it's a tough matchup, Mitch. I'm not saying I don't think the Phillies will win this. They should. They are a better, more talented at this moment in time team. They should have the pitching advantage. The key is which Aaron Nola is going to show up in game 2, Mitch, because you want to win game 1, and I feel really good with Luzardo versus Wheeler, but I also don't like the idea of having to face a do or die win situation in a game 3, and that concerns me because for Miami for years at this point, not just like this year, like for years, has had the Philadelphia Phillies number, and
it's going to be a whole different story this time, though, Chrome. And I could be really wrong, but Miami has nothing. Like I said, they have nothing to lose, but they're coming into an extremely hostile environment, and you don't know how many of those young kids are going to shrink under that pressure of that crowd. That's going to be, for me, what's interesting. Name me the who. Okay, we got Wheeler in game 1,
Yes.
Nola in game 2. Have they announced game 3?
Game 3 is still to be determined on the pitching matchup. So we got 1 and 2 so far.
I'm telling you, it's going to be Ranger, would be my guess.
Oh, I mean, I think it has to be Ranger at this point. Yeah. I mean, as a lot of what we talked about with Walker, I think he's the benefit of a lot of runs. Yeah. And he's made pitch. I credit him for making pitches in situations and doing enough to win games. For a guy who gives up a lot of runs, when it comes to time to make an important pitch to like hold a lead or maintain a tie or keep the team in the ball game so they can tack on more runs, he has done that better than maybe anybody on the pitching staff this year. But that
he pitches to the scoreboard pretty well.
Yeah, he really does. But that said, I don't know that I can trust him in the playoffs. Now, if there's a short leash for somebody who the game gets away from, you got to go to him. Great. He's probably the first guy I'm going to. But I think it has to be Ranger, especially when Ranger came back from his injury earlier in the year. Mitch took him a couple starts, but he was pretty consistent for most of the year, for the second half of the year, more so than Aaron Nola. You can make an argument he was your second best pitcher.
Well, the one thing that I look at when you go into playoff baseball and you look at the teams you're playing, this team in Miami is not loaded with veterans. It's loaded with young guys that went out, played above their head ability-wise this year, and got into the playoffs. You got to give them credit for that. But every one of these starting pitchers for the Phillies should have a short leash. When I look at young hitters, the first thing you want to do with young hitters is control their bat speed. Aaron Nola's breaking ball, if it's on, it's great. If he's under it, it's just a home run looking to happen. Ranger has that changeup. Even Sanchez. I wouldn't hesitate to start Sanchez in that game against them because his changeup is so good, and that's what you want to do. You want to get young kids excited about being in a playoff situation, going up there swinging at everything. And a good changeup is a great way to get that going.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I just think I think Ranger's the ideal fit here. I mean, even the pitching matchup, when you look at this team, they have the advantage. Now, I would imagine I guess maybe Alcantara would go game 3, right?
Okay, I would imagine Alcantara is going to go game 3.
Yeah, I'd have to look, and I'll double check maybe during our quick break at the 15-minute mark. I think they had to pitch him to get in at the end of the year, which is why he's not starting early. Their pitching rotation, though, Mitch, for as young as it is very, very good. There's a lot of talent with Miami's rotation, and I think that's what concerns me. Not so much their offense, although again, which Aaron Nola are we going to get? Their offense isn't like, it's not world beaters. It's not anything I'm going to walk in there and I'm shaking in the knees.
No.
But their pitching is really good for as young as it is. And they've proven it this year when they've had to face some of these veteran lineups. So, will the moment get to them, Mitch? That's the thing I would be curious
of. That's the big question. When you're in the playoffs for the first time in your career, everything's going 100 miles an hour. Your brain, everything. the media, everything that surrounds a playoff situation, these kids have never dealt with. And the guys that go on in their career to be superstars are the ones that can slow everything down in this type of situation and treat it like a regular game.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. And being on the road in Philadelphia, a very game crowd who is very pumped up, just in general of a sports city right now, coming off of another big win for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a
Yep.
very jacked up Philadelphia fan base right now, and that is going to be very telling to see how close is Miami at this point. Are they ahead of schedule, or was maybe they're still on a year or two away, which is kind of where I thought they were, with just a little bit of luck to get in this year, getting right hot at the right time.
They got hot at the right time, and the other team fell apart at the right time.
Yeah,
you can't take away the fact they played 162 games and they came out with a record that was better than most.
Absolutely.
So these guys were hanging around. They were hanging around Atlanta for a long time, and then the Phillies went in and took 3 out of 4 from them down in Miami, and that kind of turned their season around. They ended up having to fight and claw to get in there. And when you do that, one of two things can happen. It can either, the fact that you got in can propel you and give you a lot of confidence, or you busted it and you're spent. We're going to have to find out which one of those is going to be Miami. Are they on a roll, or now are they spent? And coming into Philly, this is no place to come to play if you're tired, because they will beat you down in Philly.
Yeah, 100%. I think the Phillies really need to make sure they get this done in games 1 and 2, though. Because, again, when you're looking at – and I like Ranger. I thought Ranger last year in the playoffs really was one of your most consistent pitchers, most reliable guys out there. He pitched really, really well in the World Series and in the NLCS. I don't want to go – I don't like the idea of Alcantara being able to – their ace throwing game 3, man. That's scary.
The thing about it, though, the Phillies find a way to beat Alcantara, whether it's nothing going into the ninth and they score 1 run. Look at how many times they've overcome this guy in the last 2 years. For some reason, the Phillies find a way to beat this guy. I'm not concerned about him. I'm more concerned about the younger kids that are going out there. And is adrenaline going to make them better, or is it going to make them worse?
Nothing to lose.
No.
You kind of go out there, you got the world by the balls, just getting out there and playing, nothing to lose. And that's a lot of times that is, and this, Mitch, that's like the scariest type of team to play, when they can play loose and free and they have nothing to lose, as opposed to, the Phillies go out there and they fall apart in this opening wild card series. Lots of questions coming along the way. Lots of, who's going to be here and who's going to not, because people are going to want to roll heads, but just because of where the Phillies are at right now, the way they're built, right? They're built to win now. They have a lot of veteran leaders. They have young talent. Obviously the future core is being kind of groomed here in Bohm and Stott and Rojas and some of these other guys.
Yep.
But they are in as good of a position now as they have been, Mitch, since 1980, and I'm including the 2018, the amount of talent that's on this team up and down, obviously in the lineup. So I'd be interested to see that.
Chrome, what's up, fellas? Alcantara, I thought, was out for the playoffs unless there's new news.
Let me see. Maybe that's what it is. I could be wrong then, Greg.
I wouldn't like that. I like that matchup.
That's true. This is a consensus. Greg saying down here, and guys, you could catch Greg on A2D Wednesday nights and on Agree to Disagree on Sunday nights. Part of A2D family here. Says, I'm nervous about the series. Only team in baseball I'm nervous about, but he'll agree to the poll. We're the better team. We should win. There seems to be a consensus, Mitch, that
everybody's afraid of this team, and they should be. There's nothing
so crazy.
And what we're going to find out tomorrow night, just by the look on their faces. Are they just excited to be there? Is the moment too big for them? You'll be able to read it on their starting pitcher's face. That's why I like Ranger in the postseason. because Ranger is completely blank. He can have the worst stuff in the world or his best stuff, and you'll never know which by looking at him. And that's how you go out and win baseball games. Don't give hitters anything to go on. That's simple.
Absolutely. We're going to come back on the other side. We're going to take a quick step away here. A little love with RTC. We're going to hear from RTC. On the other side, we'll come back. We'll continue to preview the Miami Marlins series, wild card series, as well as let's talk about the fact that the Phillies won 90 games this year in a year that it really doesn't feel like they were winning 90 games.
No.
So let's go. Let's hear from RTC first. We'll come back on the other side and we'll talk about that.
Mitch Williams here. If your company ships freight, join my winning team at Raymond Transportation Corporation. Let us become part of your team. RTC has been serving shippers nationwide for 26 years. With 10 terminals located throughout the U.S., volume LTL, small LTL, truckload, and rail. You can count on RTC to be the closer you need. I know firsthand that the Delaware Valley demands accountability. Call me at 800-206-3983 to schedule a meeting. Give me one shipment, and we will earn the rest.
That's a fact.
That is a fact. Oh, man. Back here on the other side with Mitch. Mitch Williams, former Philadelphia Phillies closer. Lead co-host here of Here's the Thing. Myself, I'm Chrome. Tom Arnaud now today. Mitch, coming back. First of all, Greg, you are right. Over this past week, they did shut down Alcantara. So that is why he's not pitching in the playoffs. So fair enough. I must have missed that news. Been a lot of Eagles stuff going on this week. So... and that's kind of where my bread and butter is at. But so that makes me feel better about it then, Mitch. I'll be honest.
Me. They have seen him so much over the last 2 years. I like that matchup for the Phillies. But now that it's not an option, they're going to be running someone out there that the Phillies have not seen a lot of. And I don't like that in the postseason.
Well, that's a fair point as well. You know, the unfamiliar again. When we talk about the unfamiliar, when we talk about young guys who aren't smart enough to let the moment get to them, that is a scary situation to go into.
There's nothing more scary than youth and confidence. We'll find out how confident they are tomorrow night.
And sometimes the naiveness, too.
Yep.
Too dumb, like I hate to say, but it's too dumb to be intimidated. You know what I mean?
Right.
To understand the magnitude of the moment.
There's nothing worse than playing a team that has nothing to lose. Everybody is writing this series off. That the Phillies are going to win it. The Marlins aren't the same caliber. Well, guess what? In a 3-game series, pitching wins. That's a fact.
Absolutely. So I'm going to be interested here. I'm looking up the rotation. So, it might be looking at maybe Yuri Perez. Oh, he's out too. He's hurt. Edward Cabrera, Ryan West. I mean, Braxton Garrett. There's nothing that really intimidates you in terms of the third pitcher for the Marlins. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Phillies end up with 90 wins this year, Mitch. I don't know. Did it feel like 90 wins? I don't feel like it did.
I felt like we were bitching about JT and Turner and Nola the entire year. And here we sit. The season's over already, with the exception of the postseason. And the Phillies win 90 games, and there's no way I'd have bet on that coming out in May. Looking at what this team had done through May, there's no way I'd have bet on 90 wins. Like,
can you imagine if, like, Trey started hitting just a month or a month and a half earlier? They might be a 100-win team. Not that that's like a huge, huge thing, but I really look like it does make me sit back, Mitch, and I look at how far is the distance between, say, like them and in Atlanta or them and some of these other playoff teams, right? And I know we kind of talked about it last week, but in hindsight now, it's like a quiet 90 wins. And then you look back and you're like, wow, this team won 90 wins without any semblance of consistency. And we're not just talking about offensively.
No, I'm telling you, Trey has got me so nervous, and I'll guarantee you pitchers are nervous. He's made 23 errors.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen. Mm-mm. And that's just a case of him taking his at-bats out in the field with him earlier in the year. But the errors he's making now are just lazy. And that's what bothers me. They're lazy, kind of relaxed errors. You can't have that this time of year. every play that should be made in the postseason has to be made. You give extra outs in the postseason, you give wins.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair point. The one thing with Trey is he does have the playoff experience. This isn't a new environment for him, so I do think he's one of those guys. You see a different level when the playoffs roll around, and
Well, I hope so.
for the sake of the pitching staff, for the defense behind, we got to hope, right? But I just think like if he would have hit a month earlier, how good this team would have been. Maybe
there's
had
no
a shot
question.
at the top seed in the National League. It's crazy to think about.
They'd have been in the running.
Yeah.
If all these guys, I mean, stop and think about it. JT, Turner, they've all, with the exception of the young guys, I feel like we talked about everybody in this lineup except Nick. Nick has had a good year. Alec Boehm, and go back a year. Would you think your pitching staff would be hoping they hit a ground ball to Alec Boehm rather than hitting it to Trey Turner?
No.
But that's the situation right now. They don't want a ball hit to Trey. They want the ball hit to somebody else in the infield. Stott makes almost every play.
Mm-hmm.
Trey has got to find something to do in the infield during workouts that get him back to the shortstop he's supposed to be. And they've got one of the best teachers in the game in Larry Boa. I don't know how much Larry has to do with working with infielders anymore, but he's the best I've ever seen at coaching infield play.
I mean, I don't know what his involvement is now either, but even if that were the case, I mean, playoffs are a time where you pull out all the stops. So making a phone call and saying, "Hey, dude, come in and let's work for a few hours." I'm pretty sure Larry would jump right on it and come right over. I mean, he is
would.
Mr. Philly.
I know he still works for the organization, so.
Yeah, I mean, even if he didn't, right? I look at Larry Boa as he's like Mr. Philadelphia Phillies, right? Like, I mean, everybody knows Larry, everybody loves Larry. He's had 15 different tenures in different
He's
positions.
Philadelphia through and through. He
Mhm.
played the game the way it was supposed to be played. He's just like the people in Philly. He hates to lose, and he'll do whatever it takes to not lose. So if someone called him and said, "Hey, come down here and get in Trey's ear," he'd do it in a heartbeat.
Unrelated. You got any good Larry stories you want to share with us?
Oh wow, let me think about that for a little while.
Yeah. We'll circle back at the end of the show, but I mean, he's an interesting
I have one
cat.
good story with Larry and Dave Hollins. We're in at Wrigley, and Dave Hollins was having trouble making throws from third to first. So John Vukovic took him out early to hit ground balls and make throws to first. Well, Bo and I both went down, and we're sitting on the bench in the dugout, and I said something funny, and Larry and I both bust out laughing. And I swear to you, the next thing we saw, a baseball hit the concrete wall between both our heads. Dave Hollins thought we were laughing at him.
That's what I thought you were going there.
He fired the ball at us. I mean, just missed both our heads. I don't know. I never saw it until it hit. But yeah, me and Bo decided not to watch Headley take grounders anymore.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. He's a trip, Larry. But yeah, no. Get circling back to where we're at here. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that defensively, you definitely have to shore things up. You need Trey to do what he's going to do, what he typically does, not kind of what you've seen. And you got to put your best defensive matchups out there. So whatever that is, Rojas, Marsh in the outfield, whatever you need, you got to help the pitching as much as possible. Because that's the other thing. That's the other factor here, Mitch. Right? 90 wins with your second best starter having ultimately his numbers don't look that bad, but again it's numbers, and
the numbers don't look that bad, but if you watch the games, it looks bad.
A subpar year, I would say above average still, but for a number 2 pitcher and what the expectations, what he can do, I would call it a subpar year. So think about if he just turned it on, it was a little bit more consistent,
All he does is just think about throwing the ball downhill. You've got a great number 2 starter. But if he goes out there and he gets around the ball and under the ball, it's going to be a long night because these Miami hitters, they're free swingers. And the one thing you want to do is get the ball off the barrel of the bat. If you're under it, you can't do that. And it's so easy to see when Aaron's going good.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Let me ask you about those wild card rounds. Obviously with the new format, it's basically an extra series, right? It's an extra series in the season. Do you
More
like
money
the
for ownership.
idea? What's that?
More money for ownership.
Absolutely, more money, and hey, it's more merchandise sales because there could be a team that goes out there plays 2 games, but guess what? They have a wild card T-shirt with their team's logo, and anybody's
Oh,
going to go
yeah.
out there and buy it. Or those MLB playoffs 2023 shirts and your team's logo, people are going to go out and buy it. We all know that.
Absolutely.
But I have a love-hate thing for this. I've always enjoyed the fact that I like the idea of how can we get more fan bases involved, because I do think, and this is not just Major League Baseball. I mean, we've seen it with football. We've seen it. The NBA is the most guilty of all of it. It's like teams get into this purgatory, right? So we kind of end up seeing the same teams every single year. So the idea of figuring out a way to open it up, I don't like the NBA's thing with the round robin, but MLB adding a couple of more playoff teams, I don't mind it, but I don't know that I don't. There's no break whatsoever in between everything. You get done this, you go right back out, and you start, whatever your divisional series is.
Players prefer that. They don't want to sit around for a week in between the season ending and the postseason starting. But what it does is it waters down the postseason, and it's great for teams like Miami that can sneak in or get in. I'm not going to say sneak in; they earned it.
Mm-hmm.
Get in. The Phillies did it last year, and they ended up in a World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to San Francisco's World Series. They were wild card teams that got hot at the right time. So it gives teams, it shows you what can happen when teams play a short series against each other. You give me a good pitcher on a high school team, I can compete with a big league team. It's all about pitching. If you control the other team's bats, you control the game. So baseball being different than any other sport, it all comes down to the pitching.
Yeah.
You take a 17-year-old kid that's got a good head on his shoulders and go out there and execute pitches, he can beat a big league team. And that's what's scary about Miami. They've got young kids, and if they're confident, youth and confidence is a dangerous combination.
Yeah. See, and this is Maren Riesland. I know Maren. She's in Omaha. So shout out to Omaha Huskers out there. The regular season itself is too long. I say expand the postseason and wild card by shortening the regular season just a smidge. What do you think of that, Mitch?
Then the ownership will never go for that. If you try to get it back to 154 games, no, they're not taking 8 games and 8 days of gates and souvenirs and everything else, concessions. They're not taking 8 days off the calendar that they were going to make money.
So I think the idea, right? So we have a 3-game series, right? I'm just spitfiring a couple things here. It is long. It is very, very long. But we're kind of conditioned to that. So first, kind of before I go to where Maren went there, I agree. I like the wild card. I always liked the wild card idea before, when it wasn't just divisional winners. However, I feel like it's expanded so much now, right? To where, like you said, guys don't like sitting around for a week. So you have whatever team comes out basically just playing straight through, while these other teams have to sit back and wait 4 or 5 days, 6 days sometimes to get their series going. I don't like that idea. I think
and
it's
that's
weird.
why teams like the Phillies last year can go in and have success.
You're almost better off.
You're better off playing.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah.
You're better off playing than having a 3 or 4 day shutdown where it changes everything you do during the course of a season. It changes your routine, everything. Baseball players are creatures of habit. Believe me, I put the same socks on for a year straight. That we're just creatures of habit.
And we're going to take a break in a second, but I just want to throw this in to respond to you. You're absolutely right. And that's the issue here, right? It's the emphasis on winning the division. Like a lot of players, it seems like it's like, okay, regular season doesn't matter as long as we play good enough to get into a wild card spot, we might be in a better position because we're
Absolutely.
playing through. And I don't like that. I think it's a punishment to the teams that win the division, and I don't like that at all. I want to talk about this again on the other side, but first, let's hear a little love from our friends over at Royal Billiard Recreation.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
All right. Back over here. Don't forget, guys, they got pool. They got spas over there, hot tubs, all kinds of fun stuff. Make any ordinary room an extraordinary, particularly now when football season and playoff baseball season, hockey, all four sports are going to be rolling. Great time to upgrade and step up your rooms. But Mitch, back over here. Yeah, we were talking on the other side about the wild card, right? And we had seen Marin Riesland, who's from Omaha, who was talking about shortening the season but expanding the playoffs. So maybe you don't lose as many games. I would argue, in fairness to that, TV rating wise, you could make up for some of the loss in terms of, obviously stadium revenue, right? I think the issue is you're right in that there's too many teams that are going to miss out on those extra games for merch sales, concession sales,
Ticket sales.
right? And it's not going to change the salaries. They're not taking anything. They're not cutting the salaries. They're taking a prorated version of their salary because they're playing less games. So I think that's really hard. I just don't like this third wild card. Like I was fine with them doing the one-off.
Because then you have 4 teams in the postseason. You got the 3 division winners and a wild card. The team that finished just out of the playoffs. Now you look at it, there's 3 teams in the playoffs out of the East. What are the chances of that happening and the Mets not being one of them?
Crazy.
After the money they've spent.
Listen, my World Series prediction could not, and I'm usually kind of close. I could not have been further off. I had New York this year, and I was a little hesitant with the Yankees, but I thought for sure the Mets were going to make it to at least the NLCS with the money that they spent. It is crazy, but
this goes to show you can spend all you want. You can go out and buy as many players as you want. You cannot buy a team. And you can see that happening in New York. Scherzer and Verlander didn't like each other. The rumor is no one in New York liked Verlander. So you can go out and buy players, but you can't make it fit and make it a championship. You can't buy that. That has to happen on its own.
Yeah. Rob, bring up Rob's comment real quick. I know Rob's he's a Mets fan. Very somber day for me, but I like how proactive the Mets are being, and they welcome a new era for the organization in David Stern. So it's a fair point. We'll see what happens.
You know how bad it must have been for Buck to walk away.
Yeah.
It had to be a bad situation for Buck to say, I'm done.
So I'm a big Buck Showalter fan, right? I love his mentality. I love the way he pushes. Like, I thought he was fantastic in Baltimore. If he had an ownership group that would actually spend some damn money over there, which they never will.
Buck is a winner.
Yeah, I think they could have. And obviously he didn't win in New York. Some would argue, I would be one of them, that at least that first World Series Joe Torre won was with Buck's team. That's beside the point. And actually that kind of piggybacks off of what you're saying, right? Spending money. as much as those Yankee teams, right, have won championships, you can argue maybe 09, but really look at the team. The core of their team was always homegrown. It doesn't matter that each one of them made $150 million down the road. They came from the organization. They just happened.
They started as Yankees and they finished as Yankees, and it didn't matter who they brought in. Jeter was always going to be the man in Yankee pinstripes.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. You can go out and sign whoever you want. A-Rod. They signed A-Rod.
Mm-hmm.
It's still Jeter's team. A-Rod, you're not playing shortstop anymore. You're going to third base. So they took a $300 million guy and showed him in New York. Money don't matter here. It's winning.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've kind of gotten away from that.
Yeah, and it's true, right? Jorge, they had Jorge Posada. They had Bernie
Pettit.
Williams, all organizational. Andy Pettit, Mariano Rivera, the greatest closer of all time. And
what's the little outfielder's name? Brett, what's his name? Gardner.
Brett Gardner.
Yeah, he was there forever.
They've had so much good talent that they home grew, and people say, "Oh, they're," because then those guys became stars, and then they would go out and get a David Wells,
complementary pieces,
right? A David Cohn, a Paul O'Neill, but a lot of that was because their own guys became stars. It seemed like they were buying an all-star team. They just developed their guys really well, and then had the benefit of going out and spending the money. Look at the Philadelphia Phillies in 2008. The best thing about that team, the best thing about the 08 team, they built a core, a strong core, built around Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Cole Hamels, Ryan Howard,
Ruiz,
Carlos Ruiz. That's the five main guys. Now, obviously guys like Victory and Jason Worth were Rule 5 guys.
Yeah, but who added them? Pat Gillick.
The
master of adding pieces to what already exists.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Jason Worth was. That's what Shane was. Guys that Gillick identified as, these are kind of guys I need in Philadelphia. You look at Jason.
Eric Bruntley. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, when they went and got Lidge, I was working for Comcast at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me if they had an opportunity to get Lidge, would I get him? I said, in a heartbeat. In an absolute heartbeat. There's no way that the home run that he gave up to Pujols, he hung it. It's that simple. But this guy had filthy stuff. I mean, a slider that disappeared. And I'll still argue to this day, if Carlos Ruiz is not the catcher for the Phillies in 08, they do not win the World Series.
I agree.
Because I don't think there's another catcher in the game that could have blocked and kept in front Lidge's slider.
No, I totally agree with you. And in terms of Brad Lidge, as a Cardinal fan, watching him in Houston, dude was lights out. I do think the Albert Pujols home run definitely got between the ears for a while.
Yep.
But it was clear that it was still there, because I remember watching him the season after. He definitely struggled in certain situations, but you could see that the stuff was still there.
He still had velocity. He still had bite on that slider.
It became a situation where this dude is going to benefit from a change of scenery, and that's it. And it proved that, right? He had a perfect season in closing for the Philadelphia Phillies to win a World Series in 2008. And it's one of the, you're right, because then we talk about piecing things together. Obviously Ed Wade. I will always credit Ed Wade. He doesn't get the credit he deserves, because excellent young talent evaluator, and he worked for Houston after Philadelphia, and he did the same thing there. He wasn't the guy that was going to get him over the top, like you said. It was Pat Gillick who comes in. Then you have obviously Ruben Amaro Jr., nice guy, does a good job on commentary, not the greatest general manager of all time, who tried to almost do the Yankee thing. We talk about buying talent, like what the Mets and some of these other teams did, and it didn't work out. Sure, you went out and you got a Roy Halladay. Which, I think we'll all cherish that time. Even me, as not a Phillies fan, being able to sit and watch Roy Halladay pitch every fifth day. Guess what? I turned the TV on to watch him. Cliff Lee, lots of great talent. Lights came on. Some of it fell apart. Roy Oswalt, some of these guys just couldn't get over the hump. It wasn't the same kind of chemistry. Like when you brought in an Eric Bruntlett, or a So Taguchi, or these, a Pedro Feliz over at third base. they were well established major leaguers. They weren't the top talent. There was a personality. A lot of them were cast offs on teams, almost like you
Exactly.
guys were in
That's what we
'93.
were in '93. But the thing that made us good, and the thing that made the '08 team good, they all had their jobs. And you look at, I mean, Bruntlett, you go down the line, everybody on that '08 team knew what their job was before the game started, so they could prepare for it. Charlie Manuel was a genius as far as managers go. People don't give him enough credit because you listen to Charlie get interviewed, and all you're going to hear is country bumpkin and all that. And I was one of the first time I ever saw him do an interview. I had to come on and comment on it afterwards. And I said, well, the first thing I want to say is no one should ever stick a camera in Charlie's face again. But I can translate for everybody out there because I speak hillbilly. Charlie was one of those guys that I spent every single day at the batting cage with him watching guys hit and listening to how Charlie interacted with his players. I'll never forget, I'm standing there one day and Tom Gordon walks out of the dugout. And Charlie looks over at him and goes, "Hey, Flash!" Tom gave him a little wave. Charlie turned and looked at me and said, "If I don't say hello to him, he thinks I'm mad at him." Charlie knew every one of his players inside and out. And that's what real good managers do. Anybody can manage a baseball game from a strategic standpoint. But to know the guys and know where they're going to have success and put them in those situations, Charlie was the best.
I agree with you, and I mean we've seen it kind of 2.0, not obviously in hillbilly speak, but look at Nick Sirianni with the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, the guy came out talking about plants, and people were like, "What is
laughing
this dude,
at
a
him.
hippie?" Yeah, like is he a hippie? He's stuttering over his words. You can't understand what he said, but guess what? He knew how to get
It's
in there.
translating to his players, and that's all that matters.
That's right, and those players love and respect the man. They know he have his back. They understand what he's talking about. I always loved Charlie. I liked Charlie when he was with Cleveland. I think he's a brilliant baseball mind. Listen, not everybody. There's a lot of geniuses, Mitch, in the world. A lot of people, and I'm talking creative geniuses, who the storm of creativity in their mind is something that would be incredibly epic. And when they apply their crafts, it is a masterpiece. But when you ask them to talk about it, they can't. They can never put it into words.
They can't articulate it. There's very few people that know what they're doing and can put it into words and get it to translate.
Yes.
And all that I don't care if the fans ever understood him. The only thing that mattered is his players understood him. And you talk to all of them. To a man, they will tell you they love Charlie.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So circling back with the team now, let's get back to Rob Thompson. How do you feel as far as him coming in? There has been some questions about the outfield situation on how they're going to approach this.
I think it's pretty simple. You have to play defense. Pitching and defense wins in the postseason. So Kyle is going to be DHing. If I was managing, Kyle's going to be DHing because I'm going to put my best defensive outfield out on the field, and that's Rojas and Marsh.
Well, so the rumor now is it's been put out there, and again, these are reports, and it's rumor and innuendo. It's been talked about that possibly Wilson and what's it, Page? I don't even know. I never know how to say this. Never know how to say his damn last name. But those two are maybe getting the starts with Marsh coming off the bench. How do you feel about that as a possibility?
I'm not good with that. And if they're throwing right-handers against us, Marsh has to be in the lineup. You're not losing a thing in the outfield. Marsh is as good as anybody on this team in the outfield. You set your defense, and then you look at the hitting and pitching matchups.
Mm-hmm.
So all I know is if there's a right-hander on the mound, Marsh is in the outfield somewhere. That's all there is to it. You can't put Rojas and Pache in there against a right-hander. You just can't do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like Marsh should be the guy. There was a question actually, real quick. Well, let's ask Mike Hayes' question first, since it's relevant here. Then I want to go back to Leakey's comment after this, Ralph. There was a question for Mitch about a situation during his playing
bullpen
career. So, when your shoelace snapped.
Oh yeah, I had to come off the. Well, it didn't snap. I drug my foot so bad that I would wear through my shoelaces.
Yeah.
Well, I had to go to the bench and get another shoe, and the only one on the team that had my size was Dutch.
Okay.
So I think I was pitching, and one shoe was a pony, and the other one wasn't. So.
So that wasn't just to piss off Tommy Lasorda?
No.
There you go. There's your answer.
Who would you? What would I do with the bullpen going against Miami? It's simple and situational. If the seventh inning is a left-handed heavy lineup, I'm throwing Soto or the other big dope left-hander. It gets to the ninth inning, who's leading off? You go by that. You're either going to use Kimbrel, Soto, and why do I always draw a blank on his name? The big left-hander. Out of the pen. No, not Sir Anthony's right-handed. No. I can never remember his dang name. He throws 100. But I'm almost 59 years old. My memory's going to hell.
I know. Well, mine is too, because I'm doing 10 shows a week. I can't keep up with everybody. Anyway, go ahead. We know who you're talking about.
But it's Alvarado that Greg just answered. Thank you.
There it is.
Alvarado.
I don't know why I mix him and Sir Anthony up all the time.
They've been using Alvarado more closing. And
yes,
when you get to the postseason, Alvarado was good last year, but it's all going to be situational. If there's a left-hander leading off the ninth, that's who's going to close. My left-hander's getting the ball. It'll be Alvarado or Soto, and it sets up that way from the seventh inning on. That's all Rob Thompson has to do. If you got the lead in the seventh inning and you got a choice, it's all going to come down to the leadoff hitter in every inning. That's how he's going to dictate his bullpens being used.
You know, playoff-wise, too, going in, I think it's a benefit to them having numerous guys who have been closers in big-time playoff moments. When you talk about guys like Alvarado, who was here last year, Domingos has closed previously. Obviously, Craig Kimbrel. I mean, there's a lot of experience at the back end to where, you know, if you come out and a guy struggles and you have to make the call or do like almost like a committee, they have plenty of guys who have the experience.
Yes, they do.
I mean, what an invaluable asset for the playoffs.
Rob Thompson's got a bird's nest on the ground with this bullpen, in my opinion. He's got so many options on the back end, and now he's going to have options in a long situation, in a middle relief situation, because there's going to be two starters that ain't starting. So he's going to have available to him two more arms out of that bullpen. The seventh through the ninth, it's got to be three guys. Soto, Alvarado, and Kimbrel. That's it. And however he wants to do it, I know he's a big matchup guy. Me, I didn't care about the matchup. When I looked at the lineup card, I didn't care if they walked up there and stood in the middle of the plate. They were just somebody in my way. I didn't like facing left-handers, which is odd, me being left-handed.
Yeah.
But I just did not like facing him. I was always more comfortable pitching to a right-handed hitter.
Interesting. And I'd like to dive into that in a second. I did want to just little love for you, Jason Cardamone commenting in saying, what's up, boys? Favorite show on A2D. Let's go, Phils. Man, you're really bringing the fire here, man.
Wow. Thank you, buddy.
So you said you weren't comfortable pitching. Is there a specific reason why you were more comfortable pitching to righties? Not so much against why you were.
Yeah, there's no question there was a reason. Because when I missed, it was always up and in to a left-hander. And I didn't want to give someone a free pass because I made a mistake and let a ball get away. With a right-hander, if I missed, I'm not going to miss into a right-hander unless I'm trying to do it on purpose.
Right.
When all my misses were up and away to a right-hander, which they're pulling off of anyway.
Yeah, I imagine, though, not a lot of times people were coming back and throwing left-handers at you. I imagine, because I'm sure that I don't know if the book was out that you like to pitch to righties a lot more. I don't recall that.
No, I never made that known. I wanted left-handers to go up there scared to death.
Absolutely. Well, that's how you get back some of the edge that you gave off by not wanting to pitch up and in.
I've always said if a hitter's walking to the plate and he's thinking about living through the at-bat rather than hitting, I've got half the battle won.
Oh, I love that. That's a great.
And there were certain guys that if I had a guy at the plate that I knew wasn't the least bit intimidated and actually had a chance to beat me, he's walking or swinging at balls. That's all, depending on who's standing on deck. I pitched the on-deck circle my entire career.
I love that. Absolutely intimidating. Let's look at some of these other series, obviously. So, wild card series. There was a question. We're going to get to it in a second. Arizona and the Brewers. Who do you got coming out of this series?
Arizona.
Yeah, I feel like Arizona. I mean, I know they scuffled a little bit this last week, but they were hitting the ball really, really well. And if that team gets hot, plus obviously they have the All-Star Game starter in Zach Gallen, who local product from here. Is a phenomenal young talent. I mean, I think Arizona's got a really good shot to pull this out. And I don't like Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee's not going to say fakers. I'm not going to say phony.
No, if you get into the postseason, you get into the postseason.
You're right. And that's why, out of respect for that, I'm going to say that. But I think they're a little bit of a pretender compared to what most of the teams, and they were in a very cakewalk division.
Well, that's true.
I feel Arizona should win this series.
They should. And I look at the Central. It's just it wasn't a very strong division this year at all.
Atrocious.
And for us to be sitting here after 162 games have been played, and there's 3 teams out of the National League East in the postseason, I would have bet anything against that.
No, I mean I thought you might have the potential of getting 3 teams out of the Central because I really like. You looked at it, you thought St. Louis has got. First of all, you thought St. Louis has got this locked up. They were one of the worst teams in baseball, not just the division, in baseball. I've never experienced that as a Cardinals fan in my life, Mitch. It's weird. I didn't like the team coming in, though, so at least my intuition is really good because I hated their pitching. I didn't like giving Adam Wainwright $17.5 million. They were an epic disappointment in the sport this year. I don't know about the biggest disappointment because you look at the Mets, they didn't spend Mets money, but they were or San Diego, but they're up there.
But I think this was more of a sentimental season for the Cardinals. They were going to get Yachty and Wainwright, the records and all that stuff that they set this year. And now, if they both retire, it's going to start a new chapter in St. Louis.
Yeah, well, Yachty's done. Waino's now. Yachty finished up last year, but Waino came back. In my opinion, Waino came back for an extra paycheck. That's my opinion. He could have walked off with Pujols and Yachty last year. And that would have been epic.
Damn, Yachty retired last year?
Yeah, he did. I know. It flies by, doesn't it? He coached.
I was just watching highlights of that the other day.
Yeah, he was the manager in Puerto Rico for the Puerto Rican team in the World Baseball Classic, Yachty.
That would have been fun.
I think that's a guy who you look out for in the future. But on the other side, you got one of your old teams here. We got the Texas Rangers and we got the Rays.
Well, let me ask you something because I didn't see this, Chrome.
Yeah.
Who won the American League West last night? The Rangers or the Astros?
Because the West was won by the Astros. So the Astros
came down to head-to-head, didn't it? They were 9-4 against them this year.
I want to say because same record.
Astros they were 9-4 head-to-head.
Yeah, Astros snuck in. I didn't see the head-to-head records to know, but I would imagine. I think that's the first tiebreaker. So.
Yeah, it has to be.
So crazy.
But who would have picked the Rangers to be in this year? Not me.
So I was high on the Rangers this year. Obviously, I thought DeGrom might be pitching. I have liked some of the moves that they've made over the last couple of years, like a Marcus Semien. I really enjoyed them picking it because that dude's just been a winner. Like
Bellinger.
Bellinger was a big pickup. Like I look at Semien, and to me, he's an underrated superstar. When you look at his numbers he's put up, but he played in like Oakland and he played in these cities that like really they're not a big television draw.
Bellinger's not the guy I'm thinking. It's Kyle Seager.
Seager, yeah.
Yeah, Seager's the one that left L.A. I mean, he was an MVP, wasn't he? No, he wasn't the MVP. Bellinger was in L.A.
I'm trying to. You're talking about the playoff MVP, right?
No, I'm talking about. I thought Bellinger won a league MVP, but
Oh, I don't
Seager has been an
remember.
unbelievable pickup for the Rangers this year. He's played really well.
Yeah, I mean they have slowly built that team very, very well, and it wouldn't shock me if the Rangers make a run here. And that was a question that somebody actually dropped in for you, Mitch, and they wanted to know: is there a team, and it could be NL or AL, that you feel like maybe isn't like a favorite here, but has the potential to make a run and create a lot of havoc in the playoffs? That's from Don Don.
Probably the Rays. They've shown they have the ability to go out and rip games off.
Mm-hmm.
If they get hot and they're confident, they could be in this.
Oh, I mean, look at the way they started the year.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, they were
12-0, weren't they?
They were destroying the league. It was crazy how good they were. I could see the Rays making a run here. I don't want to say that they're. I don't know if they're under the radar because obviously they had an unbelievable year, but I don't see a lot of people picking Baltimore to win. But it wouldn't shock me if Baltimore went and literally won the whole thing. They are built so well. They're young, but they seem to be very well managed. The chemistry on that team and knowing how to play your role as far as what's expected of you. And it's and it is kind of that naiveness that probably 85% of that team hasn't been in a playoff game before.
And it's all going to come down to how do they react to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You get put in that situation, you're either going to thrive or you're going to shrink. And it all remains to be seen. They could go out there and play good baseball and get beat. They could also go out there and play good baseball and win.
Mm-hmm.
No one was going to be talking about the Orioles in the postseason when this season started.
Mm-mm.
But look at them. They forgot to tell all those players, hey, you're supposed to suck. Well, they don't suck, and they've gone out there and won enough games to get in there. Well, they won the division, did they not?
They did. They had the second best record in all of baseball behind. They won 101 games. When's the last time Baltimore has won 100 games? I would love to get that Hembo stat. 101 games. They won that division by 2 games over Tampa Bay. Yeah, I mean, they're just such a good team. They're so well managed.
If you'd have told Tampa they won 99 games and they're going to be a wild card team, they'd have never believed that. 99 wins should have won that division.
Like Kyle Gibson's on that team. I'm just looking at their roster, right? Like Jack Flaherty, I think, has some playoff experience. There's not a whole lot.
Just a guy that, as long as the ball goes to somebody, it's going to be put in play.
Yeah.
It's just a matter if he gets the ground balls hit at people or not.
Aaron Hicks has had some playoff experience. I want to say Cedric Mullins. I mean, I'm literally looking at this roster.
Minnesota won the Central, right?
Yes. Yep. So your divisional winners were Baltimore, Minnesota, Houston, and obviously we know Atlanta, Milwaukee, and the Dodgers. And then your wild card winners on the American League side were Tampa Bay, Texas, and Toronto.
Toronto got in.
So 3 East teams got in too.
3 East teams are in the postseason, and none of them are the Yankees
or the Red Sox.
Yeah,
that's crazy to think about.
New York is not a happy team right now. New York is not a happy city right now. Aaron Rodgers comes there and tears his Achilles in the first series. So they lose him. So that New York doesn't have anything to cheer about right now.
It's rough. It's a rough time. Maybe the Rangers. But I'll say this, Mitch. That's another team I think could be scary if they start hitting. That's the Toronto Blue Jays. That team.
They've got a lineup that if they get hot, they can run through this postseason.
Oh my goodness!
It all depends on the kind of pitching they run up against.
There we go. Mike Hayes says an Orioles-Phillies rematch from '83 would be nice. What do you think about a Phillies-Blue Jays rematch? I mean, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, there's. I wouldn't mind that one.
Tampa Bay as well. I mean, I think almost anybody in the AL can make a run. To answer that question for me, I think the NL's pretty. I'd be shocked if Arizona or any of those teams outside of the Phillies and to me it's Phillies, Atlanta, Dodgers. And honestly, to me it's Phillies and Atlanta. I'm not really scared of the Dodgers personally.
No.
So I mean to me that's who I'm expecting, but man, if you look on the AL side, I could see any team from the divisional winners all the way to that third wild card team with Toronto. If they get hot at the right time, anybody can get in.
Well, and you're looking at the Rays are a wild card team. They got 99 wins. You don't have a big drop off between division winners and wild card teams.
No, I mean
it's going to be interesting.
Toronto had 89 wins. It's crazy.
It's going to be an interesting postseason.
Yeah. I mean,
it'll be more interesting once we get through Thursday and the Phillies have won this series.
Absolutely. So listen, Mitch, good stuff this week, brother. I always appreciate the conversation. For all you out there who commented in.
Yeah, thank you.
Mitch, appreciation. I appreciate it. Tom appreciates it. Ralphie D on the back end doing his job. Appreciate you so much. And again, a lot of love over here. Royal Billiard Recreation as well as RTC. Make sure you guys let them know, the leaders in the Delaware Valley for all your shipping, freight needs. And Royal Billiard, check them out, royalbilliard.com, or go check them out at their physical location. So anyway.
You all have a great week.
That's right. Phillies baseball starts now. We'll be back next week with Mitch, Tom, myself. We'll be talking hopefully more Phillies baseball, Mitch.
Yep.
But in the meantime, give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them. Thanks, Ralph, on the back end. And go Phils. Guys, have a great week.
You got it.